There is a certain kind of person who walks into a room and immediately knows something is wrong. Nobody raised their voice. Nothing happened. But something in them has already clocked the tension between two people who haven't made eye contact since they sat down. The forced lightness in someone's laugh. A sentence that landed one beat too fast. And nobody else noticed at all. People like this get called perceptive, sometimes paranoid. What they rarely get called is exhausted, even though that's the most accurate word, because the scanning never stops. They take the room home, they replay it at 2 a.m. They turn one 3-second pause into an hour of analysis. Most people think this is a gift. Here's what they don't see. A gift with no off switch isn't a gift. It's a weight. Today, we're breaking down the psychology of people who are too aware, where it comes from, what it quietly does to them, and what changes when they finally learn to carry it differently. Psychology identifies two roads that lead here. The first is biological. Researchers call it sensory processing sensitivity, found in roughly 20 to 30% of people. Brain imaging studies show that when a highly sensitive person reads someone else's expression, their brain activates more strongly in regions tied to awareness and empathy. They're not choosing to pick up more signals. Their wiring just does. The second road is built. It's called hypervigilance. What happens when a child grows up in a home where the emotional temperature was never stable? Picture a kid who could read their parents' mood before the front door even opened, from the weight of footsteps on the stairs. How long the car sat in the driveway before anyone came inside. That child wasn't oversensitive. Their nervous system was doing exactly what it was built for: detect the threat early enough to prepare. Research on early chronic stress shows this creates lasting changes to how the body regulates fear. The amygdala fires so often in those environments that threat detection becomes default wiring. And it doesn't reset just because life gets safer. It keeps watching. So, as an adult, they look around at a stable life and wonder why they can't relax. Because their nervous system was trained for a world that mostly no longer exists. For this person, nothing is just what it appears to be. A manager sends a Slack message Thursday afternoon. "Hey, do you have a few minutes to chat tomorrow?" For most people, that's a meeting. For someone who is too aware, their nervous system is already processing the vagueness, the 4:30 timestamp, the slightly different tone. Neuroscience connects this to the default mode network, brain regions involved in self-reflection and mental simulation. Research suggests this network stays more persistently active in people who are too aware, running background analysis almost continuously. The result: they operate on two levels at once. One half is present, talking, smiling, holding their coffee. The other half is taking notes. And when they get home, it follows them to bed. The outward scanning eventually turns on itself. Psychology calls this metacognition, observing your own thinking. Everyone has some version of it, but for someone who is too aware, it never closes. They feel something and immediately step outside to examine it. Sadness appears, and before they can actually feel it, they're interrogating it. Why am I sad? Is this proportionate? Even good moments get taken apart. They're genuinely laughing at dinner. Then they catch themselves, and part of them is already watching from above, evaluating. It's like trying to dance while studying your own reflection. You might not miss a step, but you lose the music. The same perception that reads a room also reads the people in it, and that clarity costs something over time. They notice when a friend's enthusiasm feels slightly performed. They register the 2-second delay before a compliment lands. Psychology calls this heightened theory of mind, modeling other people's internal states with unusual accuracy. In small doses, useful. In large doses, it means they can never fully take anyone at face value. They don't become cynical, they become careful. And they end up lonely in the middle of their own relationships, standing close to people, seeing them clearly, and still feeling unseen themselves. For most people, empathy is something you activate when a friend is struggling. For someone who is too aware, it's a state they're always in. They walk into a meeting and feel friction between two coworkers before anyone says a word. Someone on the subway is anxious, leg bouncing, jaw tight, and their own pulse climbs to match it. Research on mirror neuron systems explains part of this. Observing another person's emotional state activates overlapping brain regions, almost as if the experience were happening to you directly. People are drawn to them because they feel genuinely seen. But after everyone goes home lighter, this person is left holding what got set down. Nobody checks on the one who always holds space for everyone else. Awareness doesn't live only in the mind. Researchers call this interoception, the brain's monitoring of internal physical states, processed by the insular cortex. In people who are too aware, this system is dialed up. A strong coffee elevates their heart rate. For most people, that's caffeine. For someone whose threat detection runs hot, the brain registers the faster heartbeat, cross-references it with its threat library, and fires an alarm. This creates a self-reinforcing loop. Physical sensation triggers fear. Fear triggers cortisol. Cortisol amplifies the sensation, which triggers more fear. They move through ordinary days in a low-grade state of alert, not because anything is wrong, but because their nervous system can't find a clear enough signal that everything is safe. Living in constant vigilance eventually produces a strategy, not a deliberate one. The mind begins operating on a quiet belief. If I can predict everything, I can't be blindsided. They simulate how conversations might go wrong. They map relationships for weak points. They start managing life like a high-risk project. Nothing left to chance. The everyday result is subtle. They stop showing up fully to anything, because showing up fully means they could actually be hurt. Protection replaces presence. But here's what research adds. And this almost never gets mentioned. Studies on sensory processing sensitivity consistently show this wiring doesn't just make someone more vulnerable. It makes them more responsive to good environments, too. They don't just suffer more deeply, they also heal more deeply. The nervous system that learned fear with such precision can, given real safety, learn to feel safe with that same precision. The depth isn't the problem. What it was aimed at was, you can't turn off awareness. That's the wrong goal. 3 things tend to shift for people who move through this, not as rules, but as realizations. Not every signal requires a response. Someone takes a beat before replying to your text. That pause is real. The story you build around it is optional. You can notice without following the thought all the way down. An emotion doesn't have to be solved before you're allowed to feel it. Anxiety shows up. You name it, let it move through without demanding it make sense first. The prefrontal cortex quiets the amygdala not by arguing with it, but by observing without escalating. Seeing clearly isn't the same as being responsible. You can read a room full of tension and decide it isn't yours to manage. Awareness is not a summons. What you do with it is a choice. When someone starts practicing these, not perfectly, just consistently, the awareness doesn't disappear. Its weight changes. They stop using perception to prevent pain and start using it to stay present. If you recognized yourself in this, you've probably spent years thinking there's something wrong with the way your mind works, that you notice too much, feel too much, that other people must know something you don't. Here's what's true. The wiring you're carrying was built, either by biology or by years in environments where reading the room correctly had real consequences. The child who memorized a parent's mood from the sound of footsteps wasn't being dramatic. They were surviving and doing it well. You were never broken. You were running a program designed for a world you've mostly already left. What's possible now isn't becoming less perceptive. It's learning that not everything you perceive is yours to carry, that you can feel the weight of a room without having to hold it up alone. The depth that made you feel so alone, it's the same thing that makes you capable of understanding people in ways that actually matter. That's not a flaw, that's who you are.